Dragon Episode 3, Second of His Name, carries on the trend from the prior two episodes. Great acting, political intrigue, and fantastic action sequences. I felt like much of last week, the pace was a little on the slower side. However, that does not have to mean it's a bad thing. Look at the first season of Game of Thrones. The pace in those opening few episodes was a similar one to this, but it's the pace that is needed to give us time to get to know and love these characters. The reason big battles like Blackwater or the defense of the wall worked as well as they did is because we cared about the characters involved. I think given how action-packed season 2 and 3 of the show should be, this pace is vital for character building. I'd also like to point out, given the timeline of season 1 and where it's supposed to end, a slower pace is necessary in order to get 10 episodes out of the story. What I was very impressed with is how much of the episode was original material, following Fire and Blood as a broader narrative, colouring in the outline from the book. The events in the hunt and Daemon's war in the Stepstones covers maybe a page or two maximum in Fire and Blood, yet the producers managed to craft a fantastic character-driven episode with vital establishment of big plot details without it feeling like exposition. The relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent is very compelling. Their friendship now, full of loathing and resent. Alicent is one of these characters in Fire and Blood where we know what she does, but know little of her as a person. The idea of Alicent and Rhaenyra being close friends is something that never occurred to me, but makes sense given the context that both would have been two of the very few highborn ladies of that age at court. So of course, it makes sense for them to be close. That closeness is what gives the sense of betrayal Rhaenyra feels so much more weight. Not only has her father remarried and her position is at risk, he married your best friend, who knew just how worried you were about the prospect of being replaced. The hunt scenes as a whole were a great backdrop, and I love seeing parts of Westeros we've never really had a good look at before on screen. It was full of what I love, political intrigue. The concept of Aegon being the heir is already a massive talking point among the lords, and you can kind of see the two sides of the dance begin to take shape. I love seeing Jason and Tyler Lannister, and found the way they talk about Castle Rock comes across with the arrogance of the Lannisters we know from the main story. Seeing Larys Strong was also great. Like I said in my overlooked casting video, Needham is nothing like how I pictured Larys. In my head, he was more like Dijkstra from the Witcher books, but I love how he's already integrating himself within Alicent's circle. Speaking of how strong, I want to take a minute to note Lionel Strong. He's not what I pictured at all, but I do love this take on him. A smart and trustworthy lord who actually gives well thought out and decent advice, not just telling the king what he wants to hear, or trying to further his own cause. Viserys was once again a joy to watch on screen. Paddy Considine was once again fantastic. You're really starting to see the weight of rule taking its toll with him, questioning and second-guessing himself. I love his outburst about all the political scheming. It seems he is self-aware enough to know that it's happening. I think it's fair to say Viserys was not a great king. His rule was filled with people-pleasing, and most importantly, indecision and unwillingness to tackle difficult issues, preferring to bury his head in the sand. I love the scene where drunk Viserys suggests to Alicent that making Rhaenyra his heir may have been a mistake, indicating perhaps Aegon should be heir. This is definitely a very important scene for Alicent's character. With Otto being the main player and manipulator, it's scenes like this that are vital in establishing Alicent's motives and why she may make the choices she does. To me, it helps me abate my fears of the show not giving a balanced view of the dance, choosing who viewers should support. As of episode 3, it seems they're going to give a balanced and grey view of just who is right and wrong, and who is the rightful heir. Now don't get me wrong, I love how they are playing Otto Hightower. He seems to be really the main mastermind to the point of manipulating and using his own daughter as a pawn. Now, I know Otto in the book proposes the idea of Viserys marrying Aegon and Rhaenyra, but Aegon would have been a fair bit older than 2 in the book. The idea in the book makes much more sense. The concept that someone as scheming and clever as Otto would even suggest marrying a 2-year-old to a 17-year-old is laughable. Now, because a lot of the characters' ages are different in the show to the book, when Aegon himself in the show would come of age, Rhaenyra would be maybe 31, which for a woman of childbearing age in Westeros is quite old. Not too old, certainly, but limiting your time to produce heirs. I really liked Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole's dynamic in this episode. While the whole hunt idea is a show creation, I like the fact Rhaenyra got away from it with just Cole, and we got to see some much needed time alone with them. I was worried they were just going to overlook the part of their relationship, well, they are quite close. I also found Cole's comment about the Lords having no choice but to support Rhaenyra very interesting. It makes me question what version of the events in the book they are going to go with. If you've read the books, you know what I mean when I say Mushroom or Eustace. Something that caught my attention is the scene where Viserys tells Rhaenyra he's not going to replace her as heir, and she needs to marry to further her line. as a way of making peace with her, that he wanted her to choose the match. In context of the show, this scene is great and fits really well, but is a departure from the books in the sense Viserys uses the threat of making Aegon heir as a way to get Rhaenyra to consent to marry. So this does make me wonder if they plan on adjusting exactly how Rhaenyra marrying is going to go down. I always have a feeling, but I'm not 100% sure, that because of the aging up of the characters in the show, the events that happened a bit earlier in the books, with some key events that trigger push for Rhaenyra to be married off, are not yet happening, and perhaps we will see them next week, at which point Viserys will give Rhaenyra an ultimatum. Now Daemon. I think after this episode, I'm 100% behind Matt Smith as Daemon. He nailed the performance with only a single line of dialogue throughout the whole episode. He really gave off the rogue prince vibes I was looking for, and I truly believed he was Daemon. The action scenes with Daemon fighting were fun to watch, however, I felt a little bit disappointed we never got to see Daemon 1v1 the crab feeder. When you see Daemon run into the cave, I was getting ready for a fight that never came, resulting in a bit of an anticlimax if I'm honest. Finally, the last thing I want to touch upon is that how much I love that each of the dragons is distinct and different, not just in colour, but in their body shapes, head shapes, neck length, and how they sound. It really gives each of these dragons their own distinct personalities, something Game of Thrones lacked, where sometimes you couldn't even tell Daenerys' dragons apart. What was interesting is they seem to be going in a direction with the dragons that proves a lot of long-held fan speculation true, that there is a telepathic link between the dragons and their rider. There was a lot of clues to this in the book, but seeing Daemon get hit with an arrow, then Caraxes roaring in pain, gives us a lot to think about. I think this episode was on par with last week, but still not quite as good as episode 1. I know a lot of people are saying the pace is quite slow, however it needs to be to properly establish the characters and set up what comes. If they don't do the groundwork this season, you won't care as much when it really kicks off in season 2 and 3. So I think I would give this episode a fair 7 out of 10. Things are starting to heat up, and next week looks like it's going to be very good if the promo and my lore knowledge is anything to go by.